Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is very good. It's great. It's great. It's actually really nice. It's like legit nice temperatures, nice everything. We haven't talked books in a while. I for a pretty good reason. I haven't read as much. I've been reading with a lot more intent and trying to be more present with my reading as opposed to just reading for the sake of reading. I've been reading for, enjoyment. That's a very weird thing to say, right? But anyway, I've slowed down a lot. And so I read, I think, only one book last month, maybe two. But the one that I most recently finished is That Which Stands Outside from Mark Morris. And I wanted to talk about the book because this is one of those books where as I was reading it, so I record my reading in a logbook. I record my progress every night. I write down, the Kindle tells me how much percentage I have left. I'll say, all right, I'm at this percent, or I'm at this page, or whatever. And I give it a score of how I felt of that day's reading. And the whole time I was reading this, it was like 2s and 3s. But when I finished it, I gave it 4 stars. And I think it's deserving. I think that it's not a 5-star read for me, but it's also pretty good. And the reason that happened is this is one of those books where nothing happens for the first 3/4 of the book. And I mean that. Literally 75% of this book is just filler. I don't know what it is. It is characters, it is situations that you go to a place with these characters, and then the entire paradigm shifts, and you have to kind of reestablish a new backstory because now we're doing something completely different. And so it's all just setup that never really pays off ever. Even by the end of the book, it doesn't pay off. But the end of the book was so solid, I had to give it 4 stars. Like it felt the last 25% of this book was really good. It was just a weird, well written cosmic horror sort of thing. The cover says, "An isolated Nordic isle, ancient forces awaken." I think that tells you what this book is going to be about. It tells you very much what this book is going to be about, and it delivers on that. It delivers on atmosphere. The author is very good at describing uncomfortable situations, which I love when I'm reading this. I wouldn't say this is necessarily horror, but it also very much is horror in some ways. It's very much like a horror movie where there's weird stuff is happening and the characters seem to be oblivious to it. But there are definitely some of those tense, awkward moments that the writing pulled me in, and I got to feel those moments. And I love those situations. Part of the reason that I read is for that. It's for I want to read an author who has the ability to put me there, like to put me in that place, to put me in that feeling, to describe a feeling that I have in words that I wouldn't have come up with on my own, right? Or usually a good author can describe something in a way that I never thought of, or that just is so much better than the way that I would describe it. And that's what happened here. Mark Morris, I felt like his writing was fantastic. Again, except for the first 2/3 or the first 3/4 of the book were just dragging. Just this long slog to get to the fun bit. I felt like this could have been a novella and it would have been just fine. We did not need all of that extra stuff. But I'm okay with it, right? I'm okay that it happened. I'm okay with spending more time on the island, spending time with the characters of the island. There was just a whole lot of those first 3/4 of the book there's a whole lot of there's something going on, and I'm not going to give you any details, but I'm going to keep reiterating that there's something going on. Whereas the reader, like, you saw the cover, you read the tagline, you know what this book is about. So the author just kind of teasing it isn't helpful. Like, it's helpful once or twice. That's how horror is set up. Like, you set up the big bad, you set up the, ooh, something creepy is happening here, and then you move along. You don't keep setting it up, and that's what was going on here. It's just setup after setup after setup, and you're like, yeah, I get it. Like, I totally get it. I'm there for you. So I feel like you could have cut at least half this book out, and it would have been the same book. There would have been no, I wouldn't have felt any loss for that. And that's okay. You know, like, again, I think that I got to experience some interesting locations and some interesting characters in ways that I wouldn't have experienced them otherwise. And it felt, I played a game recently called Dredge. I think I did a review of it. This book felt very much like a story that took place on the main island of Dredge, where there's just some weird people doing some weird things, and you're like, what is happening in this place? And as it turns out, there, something is happening in this place. That's kind of the story, right? So, here come some spoilers. In case you want to read the book, look away. This book says, on an isolated Nordic isle, ancient forces awaken. And it leans into that whole Nordic part quite heavily, but then seems to do something completely different. I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know Norse mythology that well. I've watched Vikings and I've read the Vinland Saga, and I know Viking stuff, but I don't really know. I don't pay super bunches of attention to the mythology of it all. I would say that the catastrophe that this book ends on didn't strike me as Norse at all. It struck me more as just like cosmic horror, Cthulhu, that kind of thing. And maybe that's the intention. Maybe it's like a tie together. Like, let's take this mythology that maybe this mythology was born out of fear of this existence. Not necessarily that they're the same thing, but we can mash them together and say, here's what's going on. So, on this island, there's some Jotnar, which are like troll-like, demonish type impish beings that kind of cause havoc or wreak havoc. And this girl fell down a cave and got inhabited by something, a herald, she calls herself at some point, that is going to bring the gods back through sacrifice. And her intent is to sacrifice the people of this island to bring the gods back. And they find, I guess, the Ever Tree or Yggdrasil in this cave, I assume. I'm not really sure. But again, it felt more like fishing village sea monster than Norse mythology like Odin's coming back. The book hints a lot about ravens and never resolves that. So I don't know if we're supposed to assume that Odin was around and whatever was happening was Odin's will. I don't know, but it felt more like a pasted on, like, oh, we're going to make this about Vikings because that's what we're supposed to do, instead of like, let's make this about just some ancient horror that lives on this island and is coming back to haunt people. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it to say this isn't accurate to mythology or whatever. Or maybe it was never intended to be. Maybe the intent was to create its own sort of story and just use the kind of Viking thing to set the theme of the fishing village and the weird people who don't like outsiders. Again, thought it was great. 4 stars. I'm going to read more Mark Morris books, for sure. Just needed to get through that first 75%. Okay, that was That Which Stands Outside from Mark Morris. Got any questions, thoughts, comments? Put them down below. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you show sounds smart is zeitgeist. It is a noun meaning the prevailing viewpoints, attitudes, and beliefs of a given generation or period in history. In the 21st century, going green is very much at the forefront of the nation's zeitgeist as people have been made aware of the importance of being good stewards of our planet's natural resources. Zeitgeist, Z-E-I-T-G-E-I-S-T. I've always liked that word, and I feel like it's not super uncommon. Pretty normal word.